It's hard for me to wrap my head around this, but are you all really planning on coming to this event? I'm honestly surprised you're even considering it. Nancy, why would you say something like that? This ceremony is supposed to be dignified, and having a family like yours here, which isn't exactly wealthy, kind of takes away from that sophistication. So, could you kindly leave as soon as you can? On the day of my brother's wedding, our family's happiness started to fade when my brother's bride-to-be, dressed in her flawless white gown, spoke words that felt cold and heavy, overshadowing her beautiful appearance and casting a shadow over our spirit. She looked down on our family, aware of the others watching, leaving us completely taken aback. It seemed she believed our simple presence lowered the prestige of her world. Her baseless insults were directed only at us, showing a clear disdain for our family. Yet, in response to this unjust treatment, only our dad burst into laughter, as if to lighten the mood. "Hey, what an interesting situation," Dad said, his laughter surprising everyone around and bringing a moment of silence to the crowd. "I'm Karen, 22 years old, living a pretty normal life. I graduated from an average university and now work as an admin at a reputable company. Ordinary is probably the best word to describe my journey so far. My dad, on the other hand, is a renowned figure in neurology. After years at a university hospital, he started his own clinic. Now semi-retired, he focuses fully on brain research. The clinic is currently managed by a protege of his. My parents and friends often ask why I didn't follow in the medical footsteps. They expect a lot from me, but I always say the same thing. The responsibility of dealing with life and death is too much for me. I want to make a difference and help people, but that doesn't mean I'm ready to take on the noble role of a doctor." My brother James, however, chose differently. 3 years my senior, he's always been academically brilliant and got into a prestigious medical school directly. He's also quite handsome, which makes him popular, but his academic and social success seems to have changed him, especially after a certain point. Back when I was in high school, my brother's social life took off after he got into medical school. His dates became the talk of the town, and his trips home grew few and far between. Though he was supposedly immersed in university life, his social media painted a different picture, one where he was often seen enjoying the company of various women. This pattern didn't escape our father's notice, and it sparked a family argument when my brother dropped by home after weeks away. During this rare visit, my dad confronted him, visibly upset. "James, can you explain what exactly you're doing with your time at university?" James, ever the casual one, shrugged it off. "What's the big deal, Dad? I'm passing my classes and doing fine with my grades." But Dad wasn't having any of it. "It's not just about grades," he said sternly. "Being a doctor is more than that. You need to be able to understand and share the feelings of your patients." James, impatient, replied, That's such a hassle. Nowadays, if you're skilled, you can be anything. Can we not stick to these old-fashioned ideas?" Dad was taken aback and deeply upset by his response. James grew more defiant. "I can't stand this oppressive vibe. Please, just stop interfering in my life, Dad." During these exchanges, my brother boldly stated his views, not sparing me either. He made it clear he thought little of me, saying things like, "You're nowhere near my level. Clumsy as you are, you're lucky to have a brother like me." Every time he visited, he'd throw insults my way. Growing up, I'd always measured myself against him, which left me unable to stand up for myself. Despite finishing his medical studies, my brother hit a roadblock. He passed the national exam but couldn't land a job at any healthcare facility. He was confident in his abilities and even applied to 2 top university hospitals, only to be rejected by both. It turned out the issue was his attitude during the interviews. We learned what really happened through some of my dad's friends at those hospitals. Despite his qualifications, his lack of experience and, more importantly, his demeanor in those interviews seemed to be the deal breakers. My brother displayed an arrogant demeanor, confidently asserting that he could boost the hospital's finances and openly mocked our father's advice to prioritize patient empathy with a disdainful chuckle. Upon learning about my brother's predicament, my father, torn between disappointment and hope, addressed him with a blend of calm and authority. "James, you'll start working at our family clinic for now," he proposed. My brother was taken aback. Why should I do that? My father calmly but firmly pressed on. It's a temporary measure until you find your footing elsewhere. Use this time to get back to the basics. James accepted, albeit grudgingly, his face a mix of resignation and discontent. His attitude toward our family was unmistakably filled with resentment. Yet, in his confusion and frustration, he was embraced by our father, who offered him a chance to start anew. Whether motivated by paternal love, professional ethics, or another reason, my father hoped James would evolve into a compassionate doctor. Despite this, James showed no signs of wanting to meet those expectations. Now employed at our father's clinic, patient grievances about him are frequent, and rumors of his poor conduct spread widely. Instead of improving, James's egocentric behavior has intensified within the clinic. He boasts about eventually succeeding our father as the clinic's director, causing unease among everyone. We're left to hope that, eventually, my father's sincere wishes will resonate with James. In the midst of this, James brought home a surprising guest to introduce to us as his fiancée A. "This is my fiancée A," he announced with assurance. We were rendered speechless by the abruptness of the introduction. While his fiancée A appeared sophisticated and well-mannered at first glance, there was something off about her demeanor and smile that made me uneasy. The way she looked at our family with a subtly arrogant smile raised questions and discomfort within me. I couldn't help but wonder what lay behind that unsettling presence. Was it all in my head, or was there something more to be wary of? The unease I felt since the day we met my future sister-in-law lingers. Despite my reservations, the wheels for my brother's wedding were set in motion. Since getting engaged, my brother, who once lived by himself, started coming home more often. Yet, these visits weren't about cherishing family time. They were about seeking financial aid from our parents for his upcoming wedding. Just the other day, he was asking for a significant sum for the wedding, I remember. "James," my father began, "I'm glad you're getting married, but as someone about to start a new family, you need to connect with each patient genuinely." "How many times will I hear this lecture?" "I engage with my patients enough," James retorted, clearly annoyed. "Then why do we keep hearing complaints?" "Some patients have even asked to switch doctors," my father countered, citing specific incidents to make his point. "Those complaints probably come from not meeting their expectations." "They should just listen and not complain all the time," James snapped back. My father, with a sterner voice, said, "Your attitude is the issue. It's affecting the hospital's reputation. You need to understand the seriousness of this." James, irritated, conceded, "Fine, I get it. Be more empathetic, right? If that's what it takes, then help me with the wedding costs." I want it to be memorable for Nancy. We were briefly moved by James's fervent appeal. After some thought, my father agreed with a condition. "Okay, James, but you must become a responsible doctor and a supportive husband." "Yes, Dad. I'll be the dependable doctor you envision." "If I keep my word, will you help with the wedding?" James promised. "Deal. We'll support the wedding," my father concluded, hoping James would live up to his promise. "I'll have the estimates for you later," James said. And when he finally sent them over, the figure was a staggering $50,000. Holding the estimate, which took me by surprise, I turned to my father unsure. "Dad, are you sure about this? Are we really going to spend so much on the wedding?" A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. James wants to make it memorable for Nancy and himself, and I understand that desire, Dad explained. But I couldn't help wondering if this was just my brother being extravagant. "But $50,000, Dad? Isn't that a bit much?" "It's okay, Karen. I believe James has begun to see things differently. Maybe even taken some time to reflect," Dad reassured me, though I remained skeptical about my brother's capacity for such reflection. "Even so, Dad, when it's my turn, you'll do the same for me, right?" I asked, half jokingly. "Of course, Karen. When your time comes, I'll be there for you too," he promised. Which didn't exactly address my concerns, but at least confirmed his support was unconditional. Resolved that the financial decisions were ultimately Dad's to make, I tried to put aside my doubts about James's intentions. However, my worry didn't just disappear. On a day off, as I was enjoying some shopping in the city center, I unexpectedly bumped into James and Nancy. They greeted me with smiles that seemed to carry a hidden agenda. "Look who it is, Karen. Long time no see. You're coming to the wedding next month, right?" James asked, as if there was any chance I'd miss it. "Of course, I'll be there." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, though the enthusiasm wasn't mutual. "Just make sure you bring a nice gift, okay?" James added, setting an awkward tone. Nancy then chimed in. "Karen, have you thought about how much you're going to give for the wedding gift?" I hesitated. "Well, I've looked up what's usual. If it's less than $3,500, you might want to think again," she suggested, catching me completely off guard. "Is that normal?" I asked, puzzled by such an expectation. "It's only common sense, right? Especially for family," Nancy insisted, leaving me flabbergasted. This was the first I'd heard of such common sense, and it left me wondering where these expectations were coming from. Understanding the usual range for a wedding gift from siblings to be around $800 to $12, I had initially decided to generously contribute $2,000 to steer clear of any potential friction. Yet being confronted with such a staggering and unexpected demand from Nancy left me dumbfounded. The audacity to suggest a gift of at least $3,500 was something I couldn't fathom. What assumptions were they operating under to demand such a significant amount, especially from someone not directly involved in the wedding? This incident only intensified the uneasy feelings I had harbored since our first encounter, painting my future sister-in-law as someone who might prove challenging to get along with. After processing the shock, I discussed this development with my parents back home. To my surprise, they maintained a composed stance and concurred that $2,000 was a fitting sum for a wedding gift. Despite my reluctance to bend to Nancy's unrealistic expectations, I agreed to proceed with the original amount I had in mind, believing it to be a judicious choice under the circumstances. With mixed feelings of duty and anticipation, coupled with ongoing reservations about my brother's choices, I attended his wedding. Dressed in an elegant green ensemble, I allowed the celebratory ambiance, with its vibrant decorations and sumptuous banquet, to momentarily distract me from my concerns. The ceremony was beautiful, transporting us through time with its splendor. However, the time for photos brought an unwelcome jolt back to reality. As Nancy and my brother approached our table, her smile carried an unmistakable tinge of contempt. "Oh, just showing up like usual, huh? Having a poor family here really drags down the whole events class. Maybe you could leave a bit early?" she suggested with a sneer. Her words were like a slap in the face, igniting a fury in me I hadn't known before. The notion of being labeled as a poor family was absurd and utterly reprehensible. Not just IE, but our parents too were taken aback, rendered speechless by such blatant disrespect. My brother's reaction, a hearty laugh, only added insult to injury, leaving me staring at him, bewildered and demanding an explanation for such inexcusable behavior. My voice shook as I confronted my brother. "Wait, how can you just stand there? Why would Nancy say something so terrible?" I demanded an explanation, puzzled and hurt. James's response was filled with a smug arrogance. "Because it's true. You're looking at the winner here. I'm on my way to becoming the head of the clinic, a real success in life," he boasted, his laughter ringing with contempt. It was as if he was announcing his victory to us, the so-called losers, completely oblivious to the fact that his position was largely thanks to our father's support. Our family was stunned into silence, but Nancy wasn't finished. "When will you stop groveling to James? Relying on your child's success? How pathetic," Nancy sneered, turning her mockery towards me. "You work at some low-tier company, don't you? And a wedding gift of just $2,000? How laughable!" I tried to defend myself, but her words cut deep. "It's just that I began," but she continued her relentless critique, insinuating that we were all trying to ride on my brother's coattails because he was destined to be the next clinic director. "Next clinic director?" I echoed in disbelief. "Yes, exactly. James is the chosen one," Nancy said, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. Standing beside her, James wore a look of satisfaction, as if everything Nancy said was an indisputable truth. According to Nancy, our family was financially struggling, a narrative my brother seemed to have shared, painting himself as the clinic's future leader, a claim that was news to everyone, including the current director. The mood among the guests shifted uncomfortably at these revelations. James and Nancy, however, seemed unaffected, their smiles growing even more disdainful. But the moment that changed everything was when my father suddenly burst into laughter. His deep, hearty laughter filled the room, altering the atmosphere entirely. "What a splendid joke this is," he declared, still chuckling. Feeling uneasy, I turned to him for some kind of reassurance. "It's fine. Just let it go." "Let's head home," he said, still laughing. His laughter somehow made it easier to breathe, reminding us that the value of our family couldn't be diminished by such baseless arrogance. I stood there, shocked, as my father announced we were leaving the wedding early. "We're not welcome here, just seen as a poor family to mock," he said with a resignation that took me by surprise. I wanted to protest, to argue that we shouldn't let their words drive us away, but my father was already moving towards the exit. Meanwhile, my brother and his wife seemed almost eager to see us leave. Then, turning to James with a serene composure, my father said, "I'm not sure why you feel the need to pretend, but you should keep your ego in check." James, taken aback, responded, "What do you mean, Dad?" "I'm not pretending anything." "Is that so?" My father continued then, "As the next director, you should be able to demonstrate your abilities elsewhere, not just rely on this hospital." He then discreetly spoke to the current director, who nodded in agreement with whatever was being discussed. "Now leave this place. Find a job at another hospital," my father advised James, who was visibly stunned by this directive. "If you're truly meant to be a director, you'll succeed anywhere with your skills. Or is it that you're not as confident as you claim?" Caught off guard, James fell silent, his defiance melting away. Nancy, by his side, turned pale, gripping his arm tightly, unable to comprehend the situation. "James, what's going on? How can your dad dismiss you like that?" James remained silent, his body language reflecting a turmoil of emotions he couldn't articulate. Nancy's voice became more insistent, seeking clarity on the promises James had made about their future. Amidst her probing, James seemed lost, disconnected from the conversation around him. Observing this, my father offered a smile filled with patience and understanding. "Nancy, there's more to the story than you know. The hospital James works at is the same one I used to run," he explained, revealing a truth that surprised her. "But Dad, aren't you working independently now?" Nancy questioned, echoing one of the many fabrications James had spun. The reality was far from the tales James had told. My father's gentle clarification began to unravel the web of deceit, painting a picture of the situation that was rooted in truth, not in the inflated stories James had shared. The reality of our family situation is much different from what Nancy had been led to believe. I am indeed a doctor. My wife dedicates herself to our home, and Karen has a stable job in a leading management position within a prominent company. This revelation shocked Nancy, dismantling the illusion that we were a financially struggling family. In truth, James has faced numerous setbacks in his medical career, and I've had to support him through his job search challenges. There was never a plan to appoint him as the director of the hospital. The unfolding events at the wedding solidified my decision that releasing James from his position at the hospital was the right move, allowing me to do so without any reservations. As I laid bare these truths, the atmosphere shifted dramatically, burdening Nancy with a new reality. When I announced my decision to let James go and refuse to cover the extravagant $50,000 wedding bill, Nancy's disbelief and distress were palpable. With a steady resolve, I signaled for us to leave the venue, my wife and Karen following suit. As we departed, Nancy's protests lingered in the air, a stark contrast to the composed exit we made. The aftermath of that day was telling. The wedding ceremony was ultimately called off. The guests dispersed, and the anticipated funds to cover the wedding expenses were not realized, placing a heavy financial burden on James and Nancy. Both found themselves jobless, with Nancy having quit her job in expectation of a more comfortable life, and James, despite being a doctor, struggling to secure stable employment. The financial strain forced them into debt as they scrambled to manage through part-time work, their hopes of securing positions in reputable hospitals growing dimmer. As for our family, we've moved past the incident, no longer engaging in conversations about my brother. My parents have shifted their focus away from his future, bringing back a sense of peace and contentment to our home. This experience has underscored a crucial lesson: no matter one's intellect or qualifications, without empathy and respect for others, acceptance in society remains elusive. I believe that being able to connect and communicate effectively with others is more crucial than having top-notch grades. This is something my Fath Nancy Eyre has always emphasized, and it's a principle I hold dear. I'm dedicated to becoming someone who can really resonate with people on a personal level. Moving forward, I'm committed to putting even more effort into enhancing my ability to interact and build meaningful relationships with those around me.